Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Tuesday. It's June 2nd. Lots of stuff going on in the soccer world, and that's where our expertise is because I've lost all understanding of what's going on in the world these days. Learning about laws from 1807. That's where we're at in this country, and oh man. Let's talk a little MLS because there's been some developments here, and it's what most people that listen to us for is for Atlanta United games, Atlanta United coverage, and MLS talk. And the fact that today's 12 noon deadline that had been set has been pushed back to Wednesday at 12 noon, I see as a really good sign. Normally, you don't move deadlines if there isn't progress, and I would assume that there's at least been some progress. Columbus Dispatch yesterday afternoon reported that MLS was preparing a response to the MLSPA proposal that was a counter-proposal that was sent over. Players did not train yesterday, as we talked about. A lot of it comes down to, what we spent a lot of time on yesterday, the force majeure clause, and I still think it's being confused in the way it's being discussed. I don't necessarily get how this is a force majeure clause if it is strictly tied to attendance, because there isn't one in the United States, and it doesn't seem like it would be legal in most states that would allow a force majeure clause to have nothing to do with a pandemic or an act of God or a war or any of those kinds of things that would prevent a league from fulfilling its obligations. If it is a corollary to that, it's not a big deal. One, if the MLSPA version of the force majeure, and this was reported by Jeff Carlisle, it was reported by the folks at The Athletic as well, their clause for force majeure in their counter-proposal that they sent Sunday was very similar to the NBA one, which we talked about a lot yesterday. They actually said 30 days notice instead of 60, which was the NBA one. I'm going to read from Jeff Carlisle's piece real quick. Mentioned the force majeure industry standard by one source, similar to that used by the NBA, in that the league could invoke it with 30 days notice if an event like a pandemic occurred and the terms of the CBA became economically unsustainable, or the league could no longer perform its obligations. But sources tell ESPN that MLS is concerned about the possible impact that a second wave of COVID-19 would have on its business, and that is why it is insisting on more detailed language in its force majeure clause. The league's most recent proposal stated that if 5 or more teams suffered attendance drops of 25% or more from the previous year, the clause could be invoked, and that would drastically reduce player salaries. Again, this is really different. This is really strange because, one, MLS has never had force majeure clause. Two, the NBA one doesn't work this way. The NBA one that the MLSPA has based theirs on doesn't say that if this happens, then the NBA can not pay people day one or change contracts or whatever. Once you invoke the clause, and this is the NBA model, don't get me wrong, I don't know what the MLS one is, and I'm a little confused as to what it is from both sides because the way this is being discussed. The NBA one, once it's invoked, then there is a 60-day negotiation period to redefine the collective bargaining agreement. If the MLSPA one is following that guideline, except it's 30 days instead of 60 days, to notify the Players Association that we think a force majeure event has occurred, we feel like this global pandemic or this or that meets that standard, we are notifying you that we are invoking this clause. And this is from the MLSPA side. There should be a negotiation period at that point about renegotiating the CBA. Now, I would assume the Players Association would have that. I don't know, because of the way it's being discussed, exactly what MLS is putting forward on their proposal outside of this attendance threshold thing. And a lot of people have started with things that have nothing to do with the conversation. And I think this is something we try to always kind of get through some of that. The whole idea about the attendance, and I've seen a lot of people who cover the game in this country say, well, then MLS would just slash its attendance numbers and report it accurately or misreport it to hit the standard. The way Carlisle writes it here, and we get that little bit more detail that we were talking about yesterday, it's not independent of a force majeure event. You can't just say that because attendance fell, we can renegotiate our contract. And this isn't even saying renegotiate. This is just saying drastically reduce player salaries. It doesn't line up. And this needs to be discussed here, because there's a lot of bluster about the force majeure clause when what I've seen has been the players mentioning healthcare multiple times. And that has not been discussed in some of the reports about this. I don't know what the healthcare implications of either the force majeure clause or just the negotiations back and forth are, period. I don't know. I don't understand it. I don't know what exactly is happening here. We've seen agents say that, look, everybody needs to get on the field. Everybody needs to work this out. We have seen agents say that players are angry about it. That's been reported by the folks at The Athletic as well, very strongly, that players are upset, players are angry. They feel like the negotiations haven't been in good faith. And a lot of it's come back to this force majeure, and unless MLS is proposing not a force majeure clause and an escape clause, which was the wording that Doug Robertson used at the AJC, a force majeure clause cannot be tied to something that is within the league and club's control. That's not what a force majeure clause is. Attendance would be that factor. If it is a corollary saying that if we have a force majeure event, which I think the NBA PA one, I mean, off the top of my head, war, terrorism, weather effects like hurricanes, tornadoes, destruction of an arena, destruction of things, a global pandemic like we're going through right now, things like that, those are force majeure events. And when you start to dig a little bit deeper into force majeure, and I've read more about it than I ever thought I would in the last couple of days, they're very narrow in the way they're defined. And state by state has different interpretations, and it's all going to come back to the way it's worded in the agreement. But different states are handling this differently, but they're all very, very strict on it. An attendance measure is not going to meet the standard of a force majeure clause. Is it something that would then, if you have a force majeure event, and this is what I'm wondering here, because of the way it's being talked about, it's not clear, but this is my concern, that MLS is adding the attendance thing on top of it to say we can get around the negotiation period if this happens, if this attendance fall happens. That's the only thing that really makes sense, because that would not define the force majeure clause. The global or local or whatever event outside of the league's control would define the force majeure event. The attendance clause must be a way to get around negotiation, a way to get certain things implemented immediately, and I'm assuming that's where maybe the questions about healthcare come into play. I don't know. As we said yesterday, the attendance drops to 25%. You haven't had 5 in a year so far. Could you have 5 during a global pandemic? Yeah, you could. I would assume there's going to be a lot of back and forth about how that would be defined anyway, based off what this year could be and based off what next year could be. And these are all valid questions. We have a little more detail. I still don't think we fully understand what that negotiation point is. I would love to hear more on the players' concerns about healthcare and where that relates to these negotiations, because I'm not exactly sure where it fits. But the updates that we have gotten, and Hercules Gomez was first on it, he's really tapped into it. He said that MLS pushed back the ultimatum to tomorrow, the deadline for agreeing or disagreeing. But also, Columbus Dispatch and others have said that MLS is preparing a counter proposal to the counter proposal. They didn't, or they've backed off, or they didn't say take it or leave it to our last deal. We don't care about your counter proposal. They were preparing something, and the players, I believe, as of last night, had not received anything yet. Carlisle on Twitter said, adding to Herc's post, and this was the one just saying that the deadline was pushed back, I'm told the reason why MLS is going for a force majeure clause tied to attendance is that they are worried about impact on business of a possible second wave of COVID-19. I can't see the MLSPA agreeing to it, but we'll see what happens. If it is not tied to a global pandemic and it is something with attendance, honestly, it really doesn't matter, because once you get into the point of the global pandemic, force majeure can be invoked, and it depends on how it's defined about how it can be invoked. My guess is that's where the differences are. My guess is if this attendance thing happens, then you're not negotiating, and then X, Y, and Z are what is in play. And that's a concern. The NBA one doesn't have anything to do with that. The NBA one is honestly pretty simple once you get through a lot of the big lawyer words. It's pretty simple. If one of these things happens, and there's some wiggle room in it, because we're finding out new things every day that can happen in this world. If one of the force majeure events happens, then the league notifies the Players Association, we feel like a force majeure event has occurred. We are notifying you of that. I would assume that if there is a question about it, then there is a back and forth as to, is this a force majeure event? Is this not a force majeure event? And that's something where if you look at some of the details on it on states will rule on that. When it gets to the courts, they'll say, yes, it is. No, it isn't. They could have done something. Yes, they suffered issues. I mean, one I saw was a company was trying to get out of a deal with providing something. I can't remember. They had a contract to provide things, and they said because of it was either a hurricane or a tornado that their supply lines were broken and they could not provide and meet the terms of the contract. And the court said, yes, your typical supplier was unavailable, but you could have paid more to get supplies somewhere else. That's a little more detail on just where this force majeure goes. My guess is that the NBA one is where the players started. The league is trying to add something to trigger outside of a negotiation period of a new CBA or a temporary CBA because of the force majeure event. That's where the attendance tie comes in. And that's where you're going to have some pushback. But it's a different conversation the way it's being presented. And that's the clarification that we can tell from what we know. I don't think that is as big of an issue. I think the players are upset about whatever effects on healthcare that either the force majeure tie-in would have or anything else in the agreement. And that's what 3 different players mentioned yesterday in the first few hours after all this started. Jeff Attinella, Christian Ramirez, and Justin Merrim all tweeted different elements of that. So that's where we're at. Again, I do feel better about it because it's been pushed back to tomorrow for a deadline of noon. You don't push back a deadline unless you're making progress. So hopefully progress is being made. The league has seen what the response has been to their lockout threat. The players didn't show up yesterday. And hopefully they realize that, look, we don't want to suffer the losses we're going to suffer if we go down this road. We can find common ground and we can work together here. Inserting a force majeure clause, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, a lot of people, leagues, organizations didn't really have these in contracts before. Some did. Not everybody did. Well, okay, now, yeah, you kind of see the need. I get it. And I think the players get it because they put one in too. There's some industry standard things you can follow. There's probably some things unique to MLS that you want to add into it as well. Get it done. The attendance tie is not as big of a deal as people are making it out to be. More of my question with it is, does that allow the league to implement things without negotiation? And if they do, then that's going to be a problem for the players, as it should be. It's complicated. It's a lot of people arguing it out over these different terms, but the fact that it's been pushed back, I really feel better about the opportunity for MLS to come back because, look, now you got more than 24 hours before whatever artificial deadline you've got set up, and you should be able to work this out because these details all sound workable.
Nathan Pugh has basically changed the name of the show to Contract Litigation Down Here.
Seriously, I need another Red Bull for this.
So what is your choice this morning? Are you going Red Bull or Coke Energy?
Red Bull. Where I stopped yesterday did not have the Coke Energy, so Ooh. The Coke Energy, I'm a little surprised. It's not as widely available as I thought it would be by now. Certain places have it and have plenty of it, and certain places don't. The place I went to, it looked like they were reorganizing. I think Coke is going to change their packaging a little bit. There was something about 12-ounce slim cans, like a Red Bull can, as opposed to the cans that Coke has been using. So I'm thinking they're changing it around a little bit. So I'll be looking for it and get those cherry Coke Energies when they're available. But I'm still going to be drinking my watermelon Red Bull because it is good.
Just checking.
It's good.
In going over force majeure, as we did yesterday when we were force majeure down here, and looking at state by state, the handful of states that we saw from our friends at Ackerman, and if anybody wants to follow along and they're on independent research, AKERMAN.com was the law firm that had our initial reference points for force majeure and the state by state administration. For me, the attendance rider seemed like an add-on to the force majeure. It was a separate thing that MLS decided to attach to what a standard force majeure seems to be. Because the NBA example, fairly straightforward. We went through that yesterday.
Yeah.
What it means for salaries. It's like, hey, if A, B, C, D, and E happen, force majeure, and we go into negotiate.
Yeah, nothing for salaries. It's just you go into negotiation, period, and you sort it out. And that's reasonable. Mm-hmm. That's completely reasonable, and of course the players would put that forward because it's reasonable for them. You negotiate changes to the CBA based off this unpredictable, out of everybody's control event. It all makes sense. I can't come up with any other explanation for where this attendance clause comes in. It's got to be a way to avoid negotiation or a way to get around it. Yeah,
and it has, to me, this attendance escalator, trigger, fail-safe, whatever you want to call it from the league point of view, to me it has always come across as a rider, as an attachment, as something that is being blended in with what the league wants the force majeure clause to be, even though it's a separate issue.
Yeah, I don't think it's separate from the force majeure. I do think it is attached to it, but it's got to be some way to implement cost-cutting measures immediately. But what's weird about it is I'm assuming, at least the way it's been discussed in the reporting that's out there, that it would be a year-to-year comparison. So you'd be implementing it at the end of a season for the next season. And the other question that comes to mind is, are they trying to find a way to basically force a negotiation again after this season, whatever it is, because of what's coming? And no, there shouldn't. Once you do this negotiation, that should be the plan going forward. The rest of it, the pay cut, you're around a percentage point off. That's fixable. The 7% difference on revenue sharing of a media rights deal that would be above a certain threshold for 1 year, and then it goes back to what was negotiated in the CBA, that's not that big of a difference. You can split that and move forward if you need to. This element is complicated, and I think what it's turned into for some on the player side is more personal than getting into numbers and percentages. And when you start talking about, or there's discussion in there about what happens to healthcare if the force majeure clause is invoked, if it's valid, whatever, that's a very personal issue for players, and it obviously should be. As Christian Ramirez said, his partner is pregnant, expecting right now. What happens if you're able to bump people off of healthcare at that point? That's not what anybody wants here. So that needs to be fixed. It needs to go to a negotiation, and then you move forward. That's the NBA one. The industry standard is how it was described. I think that's pretty valid from what I know, and it feels pretty fair for both sides. I don't know why the attendance trigger even needs to be part of a force majeure clause. It doesn't really. It has nothing to do with the actual force majeure clause, and it shouldn't be an out to get around renegotiation. That's my feeling on it.
Yeah, and if you're looking at attendance figures from the previous season as your guidepost, you could just flat out suck from year to year.
But again, I want to make something clear.
Mm-hmm.
Just using attendance figures outside of an uncontrollable event, an act of God, weather, war, what have you, that's not a force majeure clause.
No, it's not.
So they keep calling it a force majeure clause. So I don't want you to go down that road, because that's how people have reported it. And that does not line up with what a force majeure clause is. And that's confusing. That's an escape clause. And if it's an escape clause, it needs to be reported as an escape clause.
Agree.
And that would be something that would happen after a season, which, again, a force majeure clause has nothing to do with when a season's completed. It is literally saying that something has happened that is outside of the league's control, that is outside of everybody's control, and we have to renegotiate our commitments. That's what it is. And that can happen in March, April, May, June, July. I mean, that can happen any time. Mm-hmm. So to have the attendance clause to it doesn't fit what a force majeure clause is. No. It doesn't matter if a team has a bad season. It doesn't matter if a team has a good season. It doesn't matter anything. The only things that affect a force majeure clause are things outside of your control. Good season, bad season, in your control. Good attendance, bad attendance, in your control. That's not a force majeure clause. It's not the same thing. And if it is tied to if a force majeure event happens, then we can do this. If this happens, it shouldn't be tied to that. It should be, as the NBA one is, and as most seem to be, if a force majeure event happens and we notify you of such, and we are on the same side agreeing that this is a force majeure event, then we renegotiate our commitments. That's how this works. The questions about a force majeure clause always come up about defining the force majeure event. And when you look back at FIFA history, FIFA has ruled against a player, for example, who was arrested in their home country and then forced to fulfill military service that they were obligated to fulfill. They said that they should be released from their contract because of that, and be able to play in their home country. And FIFA said, no, you knew that you were obligated to perform military service. You got arrested. No, there's nothing out of your control. You're not able to break your contract. That's one example. I mean, it's all about, can you control it? And an attendance drop has control elements, even in a global pandemic or what. Now, if you can't have attendance, that's a whole different conversation. That's not the same thing that's being proposed here. If it is, then again, we need more clarity in the way it's being reported, and we need to explain it a little bit better, because everybody's been yelling about attendance and, well, teams could manufacture a drop. That's not the conversation here. That has nothing to do with a force majeure event. A force majeure event is what we're going through right now, a global pandemic, a war, an act of terrorism, a hurricane that damages a team's ability to play in their market, these kinds of things. It can be related to one team. It can be related to a whole league. It is something outside of your control that prevents you from being able to fulfill a contract. That's what a force majeure event is. Attendance is inside your control. If it becomes outside your control, then it already meets the standard of a force majeure event anyway. It has nothing to do with this. If that attendance trigger allows you to get out of a renegotiation because of the force majeure event, that's probably not going to fly, and it's not going to be agreed to. If it's not related to a force majeure event, then it's not a force majeure clause. Then it's something completely different.
And that's the point that I think that we need to continue to make, is that the attendance rider is an escape. It is not a force majeure the way that it's being currently presented by the league. It's an escape clause.
Well, we think by the league. We think the way it's being presented by the league. And we don't know if it's being presented standalone as an escape clause separate from a force majeure event, or if it is a corollary to a force majeure clause saying that if a force majeure event happens, then the attendance drop happens, then we can do X, Y, and Z. We don't know where it fits into the conversation. And that's a big part of this. Yeah.
So getting, once again, that piece of information that we've been missing over the last handful of days would help in figuring out where this fits. But if it's treated in its own universe, it is not part of a force majeure event.
No, it's not a force majeure event in and of itself. It's not. It would never be ruled as such, because attendance is controllable to a degree. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't force people to show up, but you can put on a better product. You can do X, Y, and Z. It's not what a force majeure event is. A force majeure event is something outside of your control. My gut feeling, connecting the dots, is that there's some kind of tie into, if something happens, then you're released from your obligation to pay contracts, to pay healthcare, to pay whatever, and that's not going to fly on the player side. So if it's just to trigger a negotiation, a force majeure event's going to trigger a negotiation. That doesn't even make sense that it would be tied to that in that way. So we'll see. Maybe we'll get more reports. Honestly, like I said, I think it is not the major issue. I think the healthcare issue for the players, wherever that fits into this conversation, is the most important issue, because that's what we've seen players speak out about, and I don't know where it fits in. That has to be sorted out. The league, the players are in, I hate it because it's in every freaking commercial these days, uncertain times, uncertain territory, all that. Can we get some more synonyms, please? It is something they've never seen before. The lawyers for both sides have never seen what we're dealing with right now. We don't have a exact, blueprint here to get through it, but both sides know that revenues are non-existent at the moment. Maybe they come back later this year. Both sides have agreed to cuts to make things work. Both sides have figured out things that will help do this. Both sides are giving. This element is another part of that negotiation. It feels like maybe the league overstepped a little bit. They got the pushback from the players. Get it sorted out. Move on. You've pushed the deadline back. That's a good sign. Hopefully we get a good announcement today or tomorrow about this, and we have a roadmap to what the return to play looks like.
What else is on your mind this morning? Where would you like to go next?
Reports coming out this morning, and it's, again, a lot of yelling about something that's not all that important. Barcelona reportedly, from media reports in Spain, had 5 positive tests when they started testing, which was like maybe a month and a half ago. I think actually Barcelona might have done testing when everything started with this. So we would have been back in late March. They had 5 positive tests. I think 2 staff members tested positive. It wasn't reported at the time because La Liga was not reporting them at the time that way, and Barcelona chose not to. Everybody's recovered. Everybody is fine, as according to the testing they're having right now in the return to play. So people had it and recovered. That's what is happening worldwide. It's not anything anybody did wrong. They didn't have to report it. They didn't report it. There's no point. It's all good. So that's one that everybody's getting worked up about, but everybody is fine. So there's really nothing to worry about in that situation. I want to get into the college situation and the high school situation a little bit because it's more personal and local. On the college side, so we're starting to hear different conferences mention what they're going to do on the soccer front. And Paul Kennedy at Soccer America lined it up pretty well this morning. The A10, the Atlantic 10, cutting schedules for men's and women's soccer by 25% and regionalizing their schedules. Conference tournaments are just the top 4 teams moving forward. Does the A10 in soccer, I don't know if they have divisions. This sounds like essentially creating divisions. You're just going to play teams near you, and you're cutting the conference schedule because they're not going to cut non-conference games. The conference doesn't really have that much say over it. Big Sky, they're staging their usual 9-game regular season on the women's side. No conference tournament at all. They don't have a men's conference for soccer. Big South, I think we've mentioned them before. 4 teams in the tournament, men's and women's, and it'll be on-campus site. It's not going to be a neutral site. Mid-American, no conference tournaments in soccer, men's and women's. Mountain West, no women's soccer tournament. They don't have a men's conference. Southern Conference, 4 teams. It looks like it's going to be on campus. Men's and women's conference tournaments, just a semifinal and a final. Same for the Southland Conference. No surprises there. These are all conferences that are not, maybe outside of a couple of exceptions, with programs that have big football programs and big revenues coming in. So they're all going to be hit pretty hard at the moment. So they're trying to cut costs, but they're not cutting sports yet. They're cutting some conference tournaments, which is kind of big, but you can determine the champion by the regular season, and you're okay there. So that's a lot of conferences. We're going to hear more. That's not all of it. The high school game is interesting, and I wanted to dig into this because it does cross over a little bit from not just soccer, but just youth sports and high school sports and coming back, period. Dan Woog at Soccer America, he's at Dan Woog, W-O-O-G, on Twitter. He's done 2 parts of looking into the National Federation of State High School Associations. It is the national governing body of high school sports. It's not directly tied to what youth soccer and clubs would look like, but there is some crossover, and as we know, high schools, you have some different complications that come into it as well. But this will give you some things to look at. So they've released their guidelines for reopening practices, reopening games. And Georgia would be part of this. Everybody's part of this. 3 phases. The sports are divided into 3 categories. So low-risk sports, swimming, golf, cheerleading. Cheerleading, I don't know if that should be low risk because you do have interaction and you're throwing people in the air, and you're catching people, and you're in a tight space. I don't know. Wrestling, football, lacrosse in the high risk. Soccer's in the middle category, the moderate risk. It feels arbitrary. I don't know where those are necessarily falling. Why is lacrosse at a higher risk than soccer for COVID-19? You're pretty much doing the same things.
Yeah, contact seems about the same.
Yeah, and you're running around in the same ways. All right, first phase. And see, this is a really important element of this because we've talked a lot about protocols when it comes to professional teams. We've talked about the cost. We've talked about the protocols for testing. It's a different conversation when we're talking about high school. It's a very different conversation when we're talking about youth sports because you don't have the money to have everybody tested. Mm-mm. You're not running around testing everybody. I don't know if you can necessarily even mandate it. So then, as we've said with the pro stuff and the college stuff, well, if you're not doing the testing, how can you guarantee safety? And that's the big question I've had about high school sports. And it's got to be a concern because these are the first phase of the return the first phase of the protocols is temperature checks before workouts, no more than 10 people together at a time, pods of the same athletes training together, not using locker rooms, 6-foot distance at all times. Players would train with their own soccer balls. They'd have to bring their own ball, or they are given a ball that's only theirs. They're not swapping soccer balls during the training session. All equipment cleaned after each use. Second phase. So that's the first phase. There's nothing about testing there. It's temperature checks, which, as we found, does that really do much? It tells you if somebody's running a fever, which is a sign of it. It's not a positive test. And as we've seen, people not running a fever, asymptomatic, can spread the virus. So, okay, I don't know if that's really going to help that much. Second phase, temperature checks, allows up to 50 people for workouts, so you're getting into more of the football phase of this. Socially distant locker room use. Really? The same pod concept of 5 to 10 athletes always working out together would continue. Okay. 6 foot distances between every participant, so you're not having contact at that point either. You're doing some things, but this feels all over the place, to be perfectly honest. Competition in phase 3, so that you're going to phase 3 from phase 2, which has 6 foot distances between each participant. So you're not having contact training until you get to phase 3. How long would phase 3 give you training before you're playing games? I don't know. Phase 3, there could be 50 or more people, 3 foot distance when not competing. So on the bench, 3 foot distance as opposed to 6. I mean, we're seeing, pro teams who are doing the testing element with a 6 foot distance or more with substitutes in the stands. Why are leagues or high school sports with no testing having a 3 foot distance between non-participating folks? Okay. NFHS suggests quarantining an entire team if one player tests positive for COVID-19. Why? Because they're not testing. Because the difference, and this is where I think we're seeing some of these weird inconsistencies, like they've talked about in England, like they've talked about in Italy, like they got away from in Germany. If you are doing the testing, you don't have to quarantine an entire team because you're testing once somebody tests positive. You isolate, you test, you get the person who's tested positive out of the group, you test everybody else. If you're good, and you move forward. You're not testing in high school, so if there is a positive test in one player, I would assume, or one coaching staff member as well, then the entire team gets quarantined. What's that going to do for a schedule? Because you're going to have positive tests, period. I mean, you're just going to have it. The NFHS also recommends adjusting game schedules to decrease time spent traveling. Multiple buses/vans and or parental/guardian transportation will likely be needed if state or local health departments mandate social distancing on buses. Football teams are going to have some problems.
Yep.
Because they put one team on a bus and there's no social distancing going on that.
Band.
Band.
Cheerleaders.
I mean, you're going to have 20 vehicles, 30 vehicles getting somewhere with a team, a band, a group of cheerleaders. I mean,
well, and think about your larger classifications where your band is twice the size, if not more, of your football team.
Yep. You're going to have parents taking them. That's all you're going to be able to do.
Yeah. So there are a lot of wild cards in this the NFHS guidelines in their phases.
This is wild. I really don't know where these things are coming from in some of this because it doesn't feel realistic at all. Masks for coaches and officials are suggested for all 3 phases. Okay, that makes sense. People are grouped into tiers to determine who will be allowed once games resume. Tier 1 is essential personnel, athletes, coaches, officials, medical and event staff, security. Media is preferred in Tier 2. Spectators and vendors are deemed non-essential and relegated to Tier 3. NFHS advises that only Tier 1 and 2 members attend matches until state or local health departments lift restrictions on mass gatherings. Then you can have spectators and vendors. Then you can have concessions. Hand sanitizer should be widely available. I mean, this is all kind of obvious stuff. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Just think about. We all know how important high school sports are in the Southeast. I know that, and especially in the smaller towns, how much the schools and the teams mean to the footprint of each of these cities and their counties and such. Sadly, I wonder about the difficulty in staying away when it comes to fans and support and all that kind of stuff, because we know what it means on game day for these fans and the towns and the teams to roll out the carpets to support what's going on.
So you're pulling out the Liverpool argument?
Yeah.
You are.
Especially in the smaller towns, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we all know what it means.
And that's why I think bans on large gatherings, I think high school football is going to be exempted from that once we get to the fall. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's safe, but I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, And I mean, okay, so right now, in our footprint in the state of Georgia, guidelines came out from the GHSA about sports.
Modeled after this, I would assume, right?
To a degree, yeah.
Okay.
June 8 is when schools can go back, and this is all sports. If you've got a sport and you want your athletes to go, it's not just tied to one or the other.
Okay.
They consulted Ron Corson at the University of Georgia to be a part of this plan.
Okay.
For football, as an example, because that's the one that's coming up here in the footprint, it is groups that are basically lift, run, go home right now, before we get into any kind of a practice schedule, which would probably be late July or anything like that.
Groups, but they're doing things individually. Like they're with the same group, like it says here. Like they're not spotting for one another or doing group activities.
They would be. Yeah, in a weight room setting, you have a group that can max out at 20, and that includes coaches and participants. So if you have a group of 2 coaches, then you can only have up to 18 players in your weight room. The way that it is being presented by the GHSA is that if you're spotting for someone, it is lift, wipe it down, other person comes in, lifts, wipes it down, you move on to the next station. And that's how it goes at every particular station that you would be participating in. And then your group stays your group. If you're the 8 o'clock group and you go and lift and you go and run, that's the group you're in. You're not going to be in the 8 o'clock group one day and then oversleep and then, hey, I want to go lift and be in the 2 o'clock group. That way they can sit there and keep everyone figured out as to, you're not crossing over anything like that. So in between groups, it has been mandated that at least 15 minutes be available so the entire weight facility can be disinfected. So you go through all your stations, 15 minutes minimum to wipe everything down all over again, then the next group comes in. So that's what it is right now when it comes to sports as of June 8th here in the state. Initially, the thought was going to be yesterday, but you had a lot of the larger school systems, the larger city schools, larger cities sit there and say, hey, wait a minute, because of a holiday week and things like that, can we push it back? And it could have been pushed back to July 1st. But they decided June 8th, so next Monday you're going to see these guidelines come into place. That it is literally, if you're football, there's no balls involved, there's no drills, there's no 7-on-7, there's no nothing. It is lift, condition, go home.
Okay. The NFHS document, it's a guideline. States can use it or not use it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Georgia has different experts who are informing it. I'm sure they probably started from these guidelines and then started adapting. In the article at Soccer America, North Carolina has talked about adaptations they've made to it. Boys play a fall season in North Carolina. Girls play in the spring. Florida has made some of their own rules around it. It's a winter sport in Florida. Connecticut said that they would not put out their plan for fall sports until they knew more, so they're not moving forward with anything yet. The second part of the article from Dan Woog at Soccer America started asking questions about logistics here, and I think there are some really good things to try to find out. These temperature checks, who's doing them? Where's that coming from? We're talking about high schools, and we're talking about if all the sports, like in Georgia, if all the sports are coming back and you got a soccer team that plays in the spring, you can do practices right now.
Yeah.
Because you didn't get to finish a spring season. But who's doing the temperature checks? Is it a coach? Is it a trainer? Does every team have a trainer for every sport? You know, I mean, like, how's that going to work? The mask question about coaches, about referees. I mean, there's talk about referees not using a whistle, which, again, feels kind of like a little bit of overkill. Because I guess you would blow, so they could use another artificial noisemaker. They can carry an air horn.
Vuvuzela?
Yeah, have that in your holster on your hip. I mean, I don't know. Will equipment need to be sanitized? If so, what equipment? Who does it? Do players have to bring their own pennies every day? You know, I mean, what are we doing here once we get to that
you
point?
are having to bring your own water bottles to training, though. You cannot.
Right
There are no water cows. There are no fountains or anything like that. You're bringing your own gear.
Yep. You know, for some sports, and I mean, soccer's one that I think from the individual training during the social distancing part, it's all fitness related. But you know, can coaches at high school levels, who a lot of times are not, you know, traditional soccer coaches, it could be a teacher who is helping a program be underway and out there and learning on the fly, are they going to be able to adapt to that kind of coaching? Which, I mean, professional coaches are having difficulty adapting to. How is a teacher who's not a professional soccer coach going to be able to get something out of some of those sessions? Trainers, and it's a good question in Woog's column. You know, they're on the front lines in direct physical contact with athletes. Should they wear full PPE? Who provides it? What about crowded training rooms? How can numbers be limited during the always crowded pre-training time? If an athlete exhibits COVID symptoms, must everyone on every other team who was in that training room self-isolate? What happens if a member of an athlete's family becomes sick? Does the athlete have to then be quarantined? What about the teammates when you follow through on that way?
Yeah.
Who's enforcing social distancing?
The degrees of separation that are attached to all of these guidelines are something that you have to look at. And you mentioned who's enforcing. Don't tell me for a second that you won't have coaches in sports all across the country sit there and be lax in their ideas because they want to get that little extra edge. They want to be a little more successful than the other guy. They think
how many programs are running drills next week? Some are.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking more than most.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think for a second that you won't have just as many folks from schools that are rivals keeping an eye out and sending folks just kind of driving by practice fields, driving by practice facilities, sitting there saying, well, hey, I saw them do this. And you have got grainy Zapruder cell phone video. And
Marcelo Bielsa spies will be out at training sessions for
in the hedges.
Oh,
guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Is this going to eliminate some programs? I think it will, just like it is in college. You know, JV teams, where's the funding going to be for a JV team to travel if you're already having to use 5 buses to take a team? You don't have that many buses. You don't have that much money for all these buses. So JV teams are going to get wiped. It's the difference. It all comes back to what we've talked about on the professional side the whole way through. Testing allows you to do things differently than not testing. Not testing, you start to get into all of this, and man, there's a lot of questions about the logistics of how all of this works because you cannot mandate testing. Because high school programs don't have $100 per student to be tested twice a week at a minimum to have that element happen. They don't have it. They can't mandate it to the participants to do, I don't think. I'm kind of surprised they haven't thought about it, but they've tried to come up with a protocol around it, and it's a guessing game because you don't have the testing to go with it. That's why you have professional leagues in this world who are not coming back because they can't afford the testing cost. And high school sports here are going to come back. It's risky. Mm-hmm. It's really risky.
When you have a sheet of paper as your guidepost, where it is basically 4 questions, and you have to fill out that sheet. No, I'm not running a temperature. Well, what if you run a little hotter than normal? Just on general premise. To me, that's not running a temperature. If I'm not 98.6, if I'm 99.7, if I'm 100.3 or 100.4, just because of who I am. That to me would be normal.
Like me, if I generally run low.
Yeah.
And if I'm at like 99, that's a fever for me.
Yeah.
So if I go through and I get scanned, 99, you're good. Like, well, what?
Yeah.
And you're relying a lot on kids to tell you how they feel.
Exactly.
When they have a big game coming up.
Yeah. They don't want to be left out. They don't want to be looked at by their friends and their teammates as a wuss, or you couldn't handle it. All of the peer pressure that's associated with that kind of stuff. You're going to get a lot of that too.
How many Bud Kilmers are you going to have?
Oh, I don't want your life.
That's not Bud Kilmer.
Who's the coaches? Oh, good Lord!
Yeah, no. Bud Kilmer was the coach.
You're gonna have John Voights all over the place, like you don't have them now.
Yeah, but now you're gonna have it related to COVID-19.
You're gonna have a lot. Sadly,
you're good, son. Go play. You're fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rub some dirt on it.
Yeah, you're fine. You're just it's hot out here. You're fine. Yeah, go play. Don't breathe on me though.
I know. Yeah, go over there and breathe.
Yeah, jeez.
You're going to have, sadly, and you're going to have coaches who are going to look at games, and they're going to look at wins and losses. And because, once again, there's that pressure element, having to deal with communities and what it means and rivalries and all that kind of stuff. There are sadly going to be instances, God, I hope I'm wrong, but I feel there's going to be instances where you're going to have coaches saying the equivalent of, oh, just rub some dirt on it, suck it up, and go out there and play.
Absolutely. We have that with concussions. Now. What's more obvious to you from the naked eye? Somebody who is concussed or somebody who is asymptomatic, which you can't even tell anything, or somebody who is running a fever, got a little bit of a cough, not feeling 100%, not feeling great, showing some signs, but they're able to do things normally. They're under the weather a little bit. Yeah. What's more obvious to keep that player out? The concussion. And what do we have problems with? Players being put back into play with concussions. You think we're going to have problems with this? And this is high school sports we're talking about. Go down to the youth level. And yes, I know it's the differences in terms of the threat to the athlete, the threat to the individual decrease the younger you are. You're not completely immune from it, first off. That needs to be understood. Is the risk less? Yeah, still risk. And what about if you are a referee in these situations and you're 50, 60, 70 years old, because there's plenty of Georgia high school referees and every state high school referees who have done this for years, who are great referees, who are vital to the sport being played, and they're going to be going into these situations. And what if a player spreads it to them? What about a coach?
Yeah.
What about a staff member? There's so many elements to it that, yeah, I know. High school kids, younger kids playing youth sports, the risk of them really getting sick is very low. You can still spread the disease. So you have to do things to try to prevent that. You're not going to be able to do them in these cases. You're not going to be able to test. You're not going to be able to test every kid in a U10 league, in a soccer league, or in a football league that they're good. You're not going to be able to do that. And if you just go back and do this right now with minor adjustments, It's a risk. Doesn't mean that an outbreak happens. Doesn't mean that, oh, well, yeah, everybody's going to get sick. It doesn't mean that for sure. But it's a big risk. And it's something that if you are an adult, if you are an older person, if you are somebody who has, immune system issues, you're going to have to be extremely careful around high school sports, around youth sports, because there's a lot of things that are not going to be checked in the same way as they are at the pro level. There's no way they can be.
Tafka has posted Bud Kilmer doing his "Whoop It Up" speech in a GIF this morning. So we've found John Voight whooping it up.
Yeah, you're absolutely going to get that. Give him the shot.
Chiefs coach Steve. So to us, he says, so our club has been wrestling with safety protocols for weeks now. Our goal is safety for our member families first. We want to provide the safest opportunity for the kids and to ensure they have a club to play with next year too. Strange times.
Yeah, it's really hard on the youth club side because, you're dealing with different levels of resources than a high school even. I just really worry that without the testing component to it, you're running a big risk. If, a youth club, which is separate, if they can basically 2 times a week ask their players to come back with a positive or, a test result that shows that they're clear. I don't know if you can mandate that. I don't know if you can have that as part of your registration. Not everybody's going to, and that's what will always happen with this stuff is if you try to do it the right way and you do that and another club says, no, you don't have to do that to participate, then people are going to go to the other club and it's not going to do anything to deal with the spread, and the club that's trying to do it the right way can get hurt. Outside of that, I don't know what else you can truly do outside of not playing and just doing individual training. I really don't know what else you can do because the testing is the only way you can truly identify how to handle things if somebody gets sick. Because this is the flip side. Let's talk about a youth club. All right. And, let's talk about a high school program, too, because this is going to cross sports. You have a positive test from a player in your club or in your high school athletic department on the boys or the girls side. If you are at a high school, you're going to have to quarantine that team. If that team was in the locker room and other teams were in the locker room, you're going to have to quarantine other teams. And you're going to have to do the quarantine.
Yep.
The whole point of the testing is so you can avoid doing that if there is a positive test. If you're a youth club, if you have one of your... Now, it's a little bit better because you're not dealing with locker rooms, typically. You're not dealing with shared spaces. You are outside. But let's say that you have a coach who works with 5 different teams. And one of the players on one of his teams tests positive. The safe way is for every team to quarantine.
Yep.
Unless the coach does the testing that he needs to do on his own, and he goes, and if you set the standard of 2 negative tests in a 72-hour period, okay, he's good. If you set that return to play idea that has been used in some leagues around the world, then okay. But that you're still going to have to at least temporarily do an isolation quarantine period. You're going to have to. There's just no way around it. This is where we're at. And this is going to be really hard for youth clubs to deal with. And youth soccer clubs, yeah, there's some who have a lot of money to work with. Could they go find a way to do testing or find access to free testing for kids? Yeah, they might be able to do that. Some won't. Some can't. Some aren't going to take it as seriously. There's not a fail-safe way to do it without the testing. There just isn't. There just isn't. And I really worry in a high school because then, okay, we talked about teams. Let's say somebody tests positive for it, and then it comes out, well, man, they were coughing and sneezing a lot for the last couple of days. Does the whole school go into quarantine?
You've got to look at class schedules. You've got to look at classes. You've got to find out who who he or she interacted with.
What's the 6 degrees of a high school student?
Yeah.
I mean, all the teachers potentially. Without testing, again, you've got to play it safe. So all the teachers, all the students that they worked with. I mean, you're going to be the whole school quickly.
You may as well.
So, I mean, this is where we're at, folks. This is not easy to deal with. And we're talking dollars, we're talking safety, we're talking spread, we're talking, a kid can probably handle it if they get sick. An adult who gets sick because of one of those kids might not be able to. And that's a real fear. So I have some concerns about the high school plans to come back. They feel a little all over the place, and I don't know if any of them can truly work without testing. Mm-hmm. And at a youth club thing, I think it's the same thing. I think the testing is the key component to ensure safety, and I don't know if you're going to be able to test everybody or make sure that if you're going to play, you go out and get testing on your own. I mean, high schools, I think some youth clubs do require a physical to be able to play. Can you follow up on that and require weekly testing? Twice weekly testing? Reports have to be sent to the club to be able to participate. Is that going to affect your bottom line? Is that going to affect your registration costs? Probably. But is that the way to guarantee safety? Yep. And I don't know if there's another way. I don't think you can do it with the rest of the stuff.
Yeah. You look at sports, you look at high schools, you look at the youth situation, you look at what's coming up, and you're going to have to be extra vigilant, especially without testing being readily available. And it literally has to go period by period, case by case in your testing or in your training. And this is one of those times where you have to make sure that you're looking out for everyone around you and not just wins and losses, because there are deeper wins and losses than the damn scoreboard at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And we will see how that goes. It's going to be a part of this conversation. And now it's really starting to be part of it. I just see on the scroll right now on ESPN, Iowa restarting high school sports. Baseball, softball teams practicing. They are the first state to have high school sports return. They're playing games in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the issues in Iowa. I don't know where the spread is in Iowa. I'm assuming that it's manageable if they are going to that point. But manageable and safe might be two different things, and that's the fear here. We'll see. We'll see in our footprint. We'll see how it goes in Georgia with activity starting June 8th. That's at least a lot of buffer time before you'd have any games, so I think we'll learn a little bit as we go. Turner Kirby says in the Twitch chat, one on the temperature thing, 100.4 is the magic number for a lot of these sites. If you're over 100.4, you're not allowed in, or you're not allowed to participate. Man, if I was over 100.4, I'm really not feeling good. If I'm at 99, I'm not feeling good. The thing, and this is from Turner, the thing if you decide to stop youth high school sports, what if a vaccine, what most people are saying it will be safe afterwards, is never made? Do we just stop youth high school sports until then? I don't think that's realistic.
No.
I don't know how high school sports have managed flu outbreaks in the past. And look, I know COVID-19 is not the flu. Don't get me wrong. I'm just talking about the way they spread. I don't know if they've done anything differently in those cases. I mean, other than if you have the flu, you're not practicing, you're not playing. I know that much.
Yeah.
But that's going to a doctor and getting a flu test and or just having the symptoms and being pulled out. I don't know. The vaccine is so, up in the air, and we don't know. It's all trying to figure it out. You've got so many different companies that are really spending a lot of money that they might not ever recoup on trying to get this thing done, because they're producing it alongside testing it so they can have it ready as quickly as possible. Usually it's test it, then produce it if it's good. Now they're taking the chance on producing it ahead of the testing saying it's good. That's going to help speed things up. We've heard doctors, we've heard experts say that could you have something identified by the end of the year? Yeah. You probably won't have it widely available until next spring at the earliest. Are you going to hold youth sports until then? No, I don't know if I don't think that's going to happen. Is it the absolute safest thing to do? Yes, it is. There's no way around it. I don't want to do that, but is it the way to guarantee safety? It is. So again, it's back to risk. How can you make it less risky and still play? A lot of the things that the NFHS has put in is things to eliminate risk. States are going to either hopefully add to that and not subtract from it, because I think it does set kind of a baseline guideline to work from. But how do you manage it when it happens? That's the thing that I'm the most worried about. Is you're going to have a positive test. Mm-hmm. You're going to have one. There will be a team this fall in Georgia with high school football that tests positive. Mm-hmm. It's just going to happen. Yep. Are you going to be able to keep it to one kid? No, because you're not testing. So it's going to spread. Then what? Does the school go on a quarantine? Is that going to be how this goes? And then you start to point back to sports and you say, well, why are we doing sports where you could spread this if that happens? Or then the vice versa is, well, what if it's just a student at the school and then a player tests positive? And that's how the chain goes. And then it's, well, why are we doing the school if they are testing positive? Mm-hmm. You've got to do the things to eliminate risk along the way. And that's going to be the question. What is school going to look like in the fall? Are you going to have smaller classrooms? Well, some schools can't do that. Are you going to have more teachers? Some schools can't do that. Are you going to have socially distanced classrooms? Some schools can't do that. What are you going to do? Are you going to mandate kids wearing masks? We've seen how that's gone.
Alternating days for learning.
All that sounds great, but there's some things just about the infrastructure of the facility that you're not going to be able to get around. And are you going to be able to mandate that students and teachers wear masks? That's not fail-safe either, but that can help. But are you going to be able to actually make that happen? Not in some parts of the country, you're not. It's not going to happen.
Can you get masks for all of your student body?
Well, yeah, and then are you going to be able to say, is it going to be part of a uniform? Are you going to then be able to say, well, if you don't, then you can't come to school?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not going to work in some school districts either, because they can't afford to go find masks for every day. Like, there's so many different elements. You don't have enough trailers, as Turner says. You can't do that to make the socially distanced classrooms work. So you've got schools that are already doing classrooms in trailers, and if you're going to socially distance it, you're going to have 3 people in there. Mm-hmm. So, look, again, the risk in school, and I'm not saying, like, don't go back to school. I'm saying you're going to have risk. And then that's going to cross over into sports, and it's going to cross over into everything. It's going to cross over for teachers, for coaches, for referees, for bus drivers, for parents, for everybody involved. That's a huge concern. There's not a way to completely avoid risk because you can't do enough testing to do it. So you're just going to have to deal with it, and you're going to have to act when it happens. And you better have a lot of buffer in your schedules, because you're going to have complete schools that go into a lockdown, or not a lockdown, a quarantine because of this. You're going to have teams that can't play for 2 weeks. And what are you going to do with championships? What are you going to do with, completing a schedule? What is it going to look like? I have no idea. I don't know. And no, you can't wait for a vaccine, because it's just not going to happen. That ship sailed a long time ago. You're going to have school in the fall. I don't know what it looks like. You're going to have sports in the fall. I think the sports are going to look like they normally do for the most part, and you're going to have risk because of all that. It's not a guarantee that people get sick. It's not a guarantee that people really get sick. It's not a guarantee of any of it. It increases the risk, and that's what people are going to have to decide if they're comfortable with.
Yeah, so we've got that staring at us starting June 8th, and then if you're looking at football, practice starts late July. Then,
so it's conditioning for like 6 weeks, roughly. Then practice.
It's right now it's conditioning 6 weeks, practice, couple of weeks of practice, then games and schedule. But if the situation warrants where you can go and have your drills and do those limited kinds of contact, that window can be opened, but right now it is not. If things improve to where you can do more things, it'll be there, but right now that door has not been opened.
I don't see that changing. It could in some parts of the country. I don't know if that changes here in Georgia, and we'll just have to wait and see. The numbers, the reporting it's all over the place. I don't know what to believe anymore with any of it. I mean, you see one like, oh, it's all down. The numbers are all down. Then you see one that the R0 number is above 1, and it's one of the highest in the country right now. So I have no idea. Before we get to our friend Steve Apolinski, Turner Kirby thought you were wearing a West Forsyth jacket for a second.
No.
I thought the logo was West Forsyth.
No.
It is who again?
It is the Washington Sentinels from one of the best sports movies ever, The Replacements. This is team-issued, movie-issued gear.
Okay.
So a member of your Washington Sentinels, Shane Falco, one of the best quarterbacks never to play in the National Football League.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So Washington Sentinels jacket, and then my LA Aztecs underneath today.
Fake football team and old soccer team that is defunct.
Afternoon.
All right, that works.
Whereas you are Bayern Munich today.
Yes, I am wearing the Adidas Bayern Munich shirt this afternoon, the morning / whatever it is. Yeah. All right, somebody who is not fake is Steve Apolinski. Tell us about him, John.
Oh, that transition was fantastic. AA-legal.com. Steve Apolinski, Apolinski & Associates, LLC. Some of the best trial attorneys around. Wrongful death, serious injury. He's the guy that you call. He's the firm that you call. 404-377-9191. Get a free consultation that way. You can shoot him an email at Steve, STEVE, at AA-legal, legal.com. Or when you go to AA-legal.com, you dial up the website, you look in the low right-hand corner, live chat pops up right there. You can talk to anybody. You want to talk to somebody like Jake from State Farm at like 3 a.m., maybe you can ask the person at the live chat what they're wearing. Maybe they'll say khakis. But 24/7, 365, live chat with Apolinski & Associates. Go to AA-legal.com. If you have any immediate questions that need answering any time of day, any day of the year, you can do it that way. Over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for all of their clients in Georgia and Alabama. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine. Top 100. HUNDRET. 100. HDRET. 100. One of the top 100 legal firms in the state. Apolinski & Associates, AA-legal.com.
I don't recommend going to the website at 3 a.m. and asking whoever is on the live chat what they're wearing. I don't want to put that on Steve and his people.
Khakis.
No, I don't want to put that on them at all. That's not good. All right, we got some stuff in Europe to get to, and let's start with a Sky Sports article. FIFA has urged competition organizers to use common sense when considering whether to punish players for protesting against the death of George Floyd during matches. We saw that happen over the weekend quite a bit. We saw where a player, and I saw somebody try to create something out of it. Look, a player removes their jersey according to the laws of the game right now, it's a yellow card. Doesn't matter. And if they have a message on their shirt, it's a yellow card. If they pull their shirt up but don't remove it and there's a message on their shirt, it's a yellow card according to the laws of the game right now. FIFA is trying to tell people, hey, wait a minute. you might not want to follow the laws of the game to the letter of the law. I saw people trying to say that Jadon Sancho got a yellow card because of the message on his shirt, because of what it said. No, it did. No, don't put that on a referee. Don't put that on anybody. That's ridiculous, trying to create drama. It's not the case. FIFA told the Associated Press, FIFA fully understands the depth of sentiment and concerns expressed by many footballers in light of the tragic circumstances of the George Floyd case. The application of the laws of the game is left for the competition's organizers, which should use common sense and have in consideration the context surrounding the events. FIFA's never made a statement like this before. Never. They've never done this when you've seen around the world people responding to something in this realm. You have never seen FIFA come out and say, yeah, why don't you guys think about some common sense here? That has never happened. That shows you how big of a conversation this is worldwide. It's not just an American conversation right now. The FA has come out and spoken on this. At FA spokesperson, which I didn't know that account existed. It is the official spokesperson of the Football Association. I don't know who they are, but it's the FA spokesperson. Probably work to put a name on it, but anyway.
Yeah, really?
Statement on the possibility of retrospective disciplinary action for any on-field anti-discrimination activities. Okay, this is the quote. The FA strongly condemns discrimination of any kind and has endeavored to ensure that football in England is both diverse and inclusive in recent years. Where any behaviors or gestures on the pitch that may constitute a breach of the laws of the game have to be assessed, they would be reviewed on a case-by-case basis with a common-sense approach and understanding of their context. The power of football can break down barriers across communities, and we remain deeply committed to removing all forms of discrimination from across the game we all love. Good by the FA to come out in front of this. I believe the German Federation / Bundesliga was reviewing the yellow cards that were issued in these situations from the weekend. It would be a strong statement to wipe those away. The one that's probably going to be hard to do is removing the jersey, period, because removing the jersey is not necessarily tied in, but it gives you the out that you can pull the shirt up, or you can have, as Weston McKennie had on his captain's armband, a statement. Those things are going to be okay. At least FIFA's telling you, basically, without telling you, they're telling you, don't be stupid here. Use common sense, because this is a major worldwide issue. And the FA is recognizing that. I hope others do as well. But I've never seen FIFA make a statement like this. I've never seen FIFA allow anything like this. Because, I mean, for FIFA, and I think this speaks to what's going on at the moment, for FIFA to allow some political statements, as some are trying to twist this, and not allow others, for a worldwide soccer organization, that's a risky move to take. That's why you have the idea that, hey, we're not allowing this, period. But FIFA has made it clear that this is not a political statement. This is a human rights issue. This is an anti-discrimination issue, which FIFA has said they take very seriously. This is a good statement showing that. The FA has said they take that very seriously. Their statement shows that they're putting some teeth behind it. We'll see how this goes worldwide. And we'll see what else comes of it. You've seen multiple teams in the Premier League as they're returning to training. Liverpool posted a photo in support. I think Newcastle posted a photo in support. You'll see plenty of that, and that's a good thing. But I'm glad to see FIFA recognize that this is not just a political statement being given by a player on the field. This is different, and it needs to be treated as such.
Speaking of FIFA, I've got a FIFA kickery story which falls into the pot calling the kettle black for later if you want it.
Man, I was just trying to give FIFA some credit. Okay, we'll come back to that. Premier League, Sky Sports this morning. Premier League players may miss opener if they test positive for coronavirus this week. Premier League protocol, players who test positive have to stay away from the rest of the team for 14 days. That's different than Germany. That's different than anywhere else. The player has to stay away for 14 days. It's not tied to good, clear tests coming back, and then they can come back. It's 14 days from when they test positive. So right now, if you test positive, the restart date is June 17th. The testing sessions are Tuesday and Friday this week. You could be ruled out of the opening week. Well, wait a minute. So the current protocol as part of the Project Restart rules that in any case of a Premier League player returning a positive test, he would be kept away from group training for a total of 14 days. Oh, including the 7 days of the government advised self-isolation. So they're adding 7 days to the government. It means although players can return to the training ground for individual work on day 8, subject to testing negative for the virus, and that it gets a little bit to what Turner's asking on Twitch, and we'll get to Germany in a second. They would not be able to reach match fitness until the day before their first game back. So you test positive in Germany, or in England. Let's stay in England for a second. Let's try to make sense of this. You test positive. You are away from the facility for a week, for 7 days. Day 8, you can come back to the training ground. You can do individual work. You can't train with the team for another 7 days, for 14 days. That's the rules that the Premier League has on restarts. So right now, for example, that first match day, which is the games in hand, Manchester City and Arsenal, Aston Villa, Sheffield United, any player from those clubs that test positive today would probably not be playing in the first game back. Anybody else who tests positive on Friday would be in that situation as well. So far, these are the updated numbers. 12 positive tests, or 12 positive test results from over 2,700 tests in the Premier League. The fourth round of testing, they went from 50 to 60 tests per club. I'm assuming some staff that would be involved in game day activities were probably added to the list, and that's where we're at. Turner asked about Germany, and man, this is all running together. There's not a 14-day removal from training in Germany. I remember that. I think they are back after 2 negative tests. But
sounds right.
I think that's right. I think that was the German situation. We'll try to confirm that, Turner. It wasn't 14 days, though. It might have been a week and 2 negative tests. I think that's it, actually. I think it's the 7 days and 2 negative tests. That's what gets you back. But we'll try to confirm that, Turner. All right, other stuff from the world of football. Let's look at Europe real quick and get a sense of what the whole picture is looking like. Belgium, France, Netherlands, Scotland, canceled. Season's over. Azerbaijan, Latvia, Northern Ireland, Finland, Kazakhstan are figuring out what they're going to do. They have not made a decision yet. The other UEFA members, most of them have declared their restart dates, and they range from leagues that are already back underway to late June coming back. Russia's June 21st, Italy's June 20th, with Coppa Italia potentially the week before. England, June 17. Switzerland, June 19. Those are the latest ones for the leagues that have announced they're coming back right now. So, progress in UEFA, and they're also making some progress ahead of UEFA meetings later this month about Champions League, Europa League finishing the season out. Reports out of Spain are saying that the Champions League final will not be in Turkey. It will be in Lisbon. And perhaps if they cut it down to single games and they do a Final Four or even an Elite Eight, all of that could be played in Lisbon. So keep an eye on things moving from Istanbul to Lisbon and to what it could be. A really interesting one from the Netherlands from an outlet called VI. It's from Tom Nipping. The Eredivisie is requesting UEFA and FIFA to change the transfer window setup this summer. And it's pretty compelling reasons why. So, obviously, Netherlands not playing. They have their roadmap to start the next season, but they're not playing. Their season's over. In other European countries, the transfer window opens when the season ends. Then it can be open for up to 12 weeks. That's the FIFA regulation. So La Liga is set to finish third week of July. Premier League set to finish August 1st. You do have European competition after that, which makes it really complicated, and I'll be curious to see how they handle that. In those countries, according to the FIFA regulations, they could leave the window open until October. In the Netherlands, the market opens June 9th right now. The season's over. The first transfers ahead of that have already been announced. If it opens on June 9th, the latest they could keep the window open to is September 1st. If other leagues are keeping the window open into October because they finished later, that's going to affect the transfer business in the Netherlands in a big, big, big way. Huge way. So the Dutch Federation is appealing to FIFA, and their board secretary, Mark Bodekies, is asking this. He says, we are going to ask if we could cut up the market, for example, by taking a break somewhere. We may be open for 12 weeks, but not 12 weeks straight. Then clubs can simply attract the players from June 9th, let them train with them. In the summer, the market would close temporarily and open later so that they're in line with the rest of Europe. So basically, like, for example, they could have the market open June 9th like it was already set to, because they've already got some deals that are pending. Have it open for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. If it's almost like the early signing period in college football. You want to sign, you want to then start spring practice, cool, come on in. But they would cut it so it wouldn't be 12 weeks straight. You'd do 2 weeks or a month, and then hold the other weeks that you have out of your 12 for later to line up with the rest of Europe. Makes a lot of sense, actually. It's a pretty smart way of looking at it. So other concerns is just the effect of not playing right now on the Dutch market. You know, they say that players who were borderline for moves, you know, your top players are going to move. You already know enough about them. But your guys who were, you know, somebody that a club in Spain, a club in England, club in Italy might see and say, man, my other deals have fallen through. I need a right back. I'm going to go get this right back from AZ or from Feyenoord. And I know they're good, but I know they've been playing and all's good. Well, they haven't been playing. You know, people are going to question, well, are they going to be able to get up to speed quickly? They've been out for 5 months. Are they going to be able to join us and be able to hit the ground running? That could hurt the Dutch league and the transfer market. It absolutely could. And the Netherlands, France, you know, those leagues, Scotland, that stopped are going to have that concern. I don't know if they're not top tier of guys that would be in the transfer market, but that second tier and third tier, are they going to have the same demand? Because they're going to have such a long layoff. Is that going to affect this? We'll have to see. But the idea about the transfer market having 2 phases, that's a good way to solve this issue. It's a really good way to solve this issue. I like the way of thinking there.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And the early signing period comparison seems to, that's the best way to break it down for folks who may not necessarily, like me, understand how it's coming in the door. But I like that notion of the early signing period.
Couple things in England on the prep to get back for June 17th. Premier League referees are hoping to work some friendlies over the next couple of weeks, as teams do behind closed doors friendlies, so they can get back up to speed. The Professional Game Match Officials Board members, which is like the union for referees, they're holding talks with the league's medical experts this week. They have not been tested yet. Plans to introduce testing will be discussed this week and would have to take place before they took charge of any potential friendlies. So, yeah, get on that. If you're going to do any friendlies right now, you might need to get your testing done now. Mm-hmm. Sammy Mokbel at the Daily Mail reporting that Premier League clubs are going to, on a club-by-club basis, pay for the families of football personnel to be tested. For if a player tests positive at a club in the Premier League, there's not a system Germany, I think, has the system where the household members are tested. The Premier League as a league does not. It's down to club by club on what they're going to do. So, player test positive, clubs can make the decision to foot the bill for testing for the rest of that player's household that came in contact with them. Clubs have told players and staff who have returned to work for Project Restart that they will finance all relevant COVID-19 tests for loved ones with whom they've been in contact. Sounds like most clubs are going to do this. I'd be shocked if they don't. Now, you go down to the championship, nobody knows. You're dealing with different finances. You're also dealing with different systems. It doesn't seem to be a league-wide type of idea. That's where England is at the moment in terms of getting back to the field. The women are not getting back to the field, and Alison McGovern has criticized the FA for their moves on this, and Suzanne Rack's been writing a lot about this with the BBC. She is asking for a plan. And that's what she wants. There's no plan right now for the Women's Super League to return. It's just they're not playing because of the financials, because they don't want to do the testing, and we don't know when they're coming back. That's unacceptable. McGovern also expressed concerns at the progress at the grassroots level. That could go away. She said, according to the FA, the Lionesses' victory in France last summer inspired 350,000 more women over 16 to participate in the game. The number of women and girls playing football in England has now reached 3.4 million, with a 54% increase in the number of women and girls affiliated teams. What steps are the Football Association taking to ensure that this gender and sporting progress is not laid to waste? There's no plan right now. There's nothing. The FA's got to do better in that regard. They've got to come up with a way to move forward. Add to the list of leagues that are not going to finish Bosnia and Herzegovina. And they're going to have some issues, and they're probably going to be in the courts because that's what happens when this happens. 11 rounds left. They have decided not to come back because the Ministry of Health of Republika Srpska, one of the two entities making up Bosnia and Herzegovina. So one half said that football matches in that half can't be played until at least July 1st. So because of that, they're stopping the season with 11 games left. That means FK Sarajevo is going to be back-to-back winners. Well, they had a 3-point advantage over the team in second place with 11 games left. Another controversy that's added to this is none of the 4 remaining clubs in the Cup are located in that area, in that republic. So they wouldn't be played there. So are they going to get played? Doesn't look like it. Well, why not? Because they're not in the area that is saying you can't play games until July 1st. So are they going to solve that one? Who knows? Add it to another level of controversy. In Australia, they're hoping to get a deal done with Fox. I don't know what they did on players who were out of contract. I never saw a resolution. Maybe they just had a temporary stay on that. But the head of the organization representing A-League clubs is insisting that a deal will be done with Fox very shortly. You've got another group that is pushing an idea of streaming on their own, creating a FFA TV, essentially, the Football Federation of Australia, creating your own over-the-top streaming service. And subscriptions would generate the money to pay for it. That's a risky move. But they're still negotiating with Fox. That's their first priority. They're trying to figure this out. There's still no update on when Australian football is coming back. The Sydney Morning Herald, Michael Lynch had this one, and there's just no resolution yet. And I don't know what's going to happen there. Argentina, one I'll be keeping an eye on is a report from Diego Maradona's lawyer, Matias Morla. He complained on Twitter about Gimnasia not wanting to renew Maradona's contract. Morla made it clear that Maradona wants to continue at Gimnasia. I saw in the post, like, somebody's like, oh, his league form was 6 wins, 4 draws, and 8 losses. Like, that's a bad thing. Gimnasia was in the bottom of the relegation table for the last 3 years. That's actually good.
Yeah.
It's actually really good. I don't know how much look, Diego's Diego. I think he's had a good staff around him, but he's had an impact on that team. They hadn't won 6 games in their last 30 or something, and he's won 6 games in what they've done here lately. He's got them. Let me rephrase. He had them to a point that maybe they could have stayed up. They're staying up because there's no relegation right now in Argentina for the next couple of years. So, yeah, Ignacio would be crazy just to not renew his contract unless they can't pay him, which is a possibility. We don't know. Ignacio is not a big club, and they were facing relegation before this. I don't think they're actually loaded with cash at the moment, so Diego might have to take a pay cut to continue at Ignacio, and we'll see what that looks like. What do we have on the Twitters? What else is going on?
Well, we're caught up on Twitters. I had here's my sheets of information for those watching on the video side. I have 4 pages of quick hitter stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and a story that just came out of The Guardian. Lorenzo Tondo in Palermo, Sam Jones in Madrid. Valencia criticized the Atalanta coach who attended the match with COVID-19. And this came out about 15 minutes ago. Valencia have criticized the coach of Atalanta for putting the health of numerous people at risk after confessing he had symptoms of COVID-19 prior to the Champions League match between the two sides in March. In an interview with the Italian newspaper La Gazzetta dello Sport, Gianpiero Gasparini admitted he was very sick the day before behind closed doors last 16th second leg match in Valencia on 10 March, but he was afraid to go to a hospital as they were overflowing with COVID-19 patients at the time.
Right.
Gasparini confessed, I was afraid the day before the match in Valencia. I wasn't well the afternoon of the match. I felt even worse. The following 2 nights after the match, I didn't sleep much. And he continued, then the statement from Valencia. Following the statements made by the Atalanta coach, Valencia FC wishes to publicly express its surprise over the fact that the coach of the rival team has admitted that he knew he apparently had symptoms compatible with the coronavirus on both the day of the match played in Mestalla, which Atalanta won 4-3, and the day before, and yet he took no preventative measures, thereby potentially putting the health of numerous people at risk during both his journey to and stay in Valencia.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it was March. We didn't know everything at that point, but we knew enough, especially in Italy, and that's incredibly, incredibly reckless. And that's a game that's a series that's been talked about as leading to the spread in both countries. And I will, as we talked about high school sports earlier, I mean, you've got coaches who want to coach. You've got, you're going to have players who want to play. They're going to try to fight through it because that's what that's what people in sports do. It's kind of what you're brought up to do, is the whole rub some dirt on it idea. It's hard to change that quickly. Doesn't make it acceptable. Doesn't make it okay. But it's part of the conversation. I don't know. I don't. It's really hard to look back at March and say that, well, we should have known this, well, we should have done this, well, we knew this at the time, well, we should have known better. I don't know how much was known everywhere in March. I don't think we're going to truly know these types of things, that like this person was 100% wrong, or this person knew better, this person should have known better. I don't know if we're going to know that for a few years, to be honest. It's so hard to say. Expressing surprise over it, as Valencia did, I think that is a nice way of saying, "Hey, dude, what?" That's okay. It's a valid statement.
Yes. In the championship, number of championship clubs. Remember we talked about QPR yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Number of clubs are opposed to the plans to restart the season on June the 20th. Once again, from our friends at the Daily Mail,
which was not consulted with the clubs.
Yeah, it's like we're just going to drop this on you.
Yeah, here, you're going to play. Have fun.
Sportsmail understands Stoke, Charlton, and they said, and at least one other club, and I think that other club was Barnsley, are unhappy about the EFL plans issued late on Sunday night. Let's see. Let me get to the dissenters note that championship clubs have been given a week less preparation than Premier League sides, even though most have the same number of games, 9 left to play. The teams that have voiced their frustration, Stoke, Charlton, and Barnsley, guess where they are in the table?
Where are they in the table?
Barnsley is dead last.
Oh.
Charlton is the third team right now. They're the closest to leaving the drop zone, but right now they are second from last at 39 points. Stoke is only 3 points clear from the drop. They're in that group from 17 to 21 that's only separated by 1 point and no more than 3 points clear from the drop itself.
So the two teams that are in the drop zone, are they asking for no relegation?
No idea. They're just pissed.
Okay, so they're just angry. The one that is outside of the drop zone right now, my guess is they would like the season to just not resume because they're safe.
Yeah.
The ones who are in the drop zone, I would assume, would want the season to resume to try to play their way out of it, unless they just can't because they're so bad. And then their fight would have to be to not have relegation.
Yes.
So, again, you can look at the table and you can tell how people are going to argue.
Yes. Let's see. What else did I have? Oh, we have a new idiot of the day.
Oh, yay. Who is it?
Phil Foden.
What did young Phil Foden do?
Latest footballer to fall foul of physical distancing guidelines after the Manchester City midfielder was pictured in an impromptu kickabout with members of the public on Formby Beach. And there is video.
If I was one of Phil Foden's teammates, I would get a...
Except for Kyle Walker.
No, I mean, Kyle Walker shouldn't do it, but he should, in the sense that Phil Foden has now put all of his teammates at risk. And they should get a long, 6 foot long at least, stick and smack him with it over and over again. Because these are the things that can create an outbreak in a team. Mm-hmm. This is where that personal responsibility comes into play. If you're going to do this, and you're going to have the testing, and that's great, but if you go out and put yourself at more risk and then go into a situation that does not have social distancing as teams are starting to train fully, you are potentially risking infecting your teammates. That's the problem. If you're going to play, and this maybe hasn't been enough of the conversation in MLS and in other leagues here. Yeah, we've got questions about revenue. We've got questions about money. We've got questions about contracts. We've got questions about CBAs. All these things are really important. But the players have to accept the responsibility as well during this of your actions are going to have to change. You're not going to be able to safely just go to any restaurant you want to or go to any mall you want to or to go hang out with whoever you want to because you don't know if they are positive. And if you're going to not use social distancing in these situations, you are risking bringing the virus into your group that is being tested, which they'll identify it quickly, but your group that is preparing to play and your group that is not following social distancing guidelines because you are being tested to be able to not follow that. That's the whole point. But when you go out and you do things that are outside of this and risky, you're not asking everybody that you jumped into your pickup game with for a good test here. You're not checking that. You're playing. You don't know if they're clear or not. Then you're coming back to training. Like, you are potentially wrecking your team's activities because you wanted to be in a kickabout? I mean, come on. Come on, man. You're getting paid way too much money to be that stupid.
Yeah.
You can't do that. And MLS players, Major League Baseball players, NBA players, every athlete who is going to return to play has to accept that as part of coming back to play. That's just where we're at right now. You have to be smart.
Found my Barnsley note. Barnsley, at the bottom of the championship, said that clubs who drop down a division should be given a one-time parachute payment to offset the loss of television revenue.
Does the parachute payment materialize out of thin air? Whose money are you cutting to get that parachute payment? And you're giving your broadcasters money back already, so your parachute payments are going to be smaller to begin with. Are your other clubs going to say, yeah, we'll give up more money? In England, no, they're not, because they haven't shown any inclination of doing that, period. In the Netherlands, they did agree on a solidarity fund, and this is the second one I've heard of outside of Germany. The top 4 clubs in the Eredivisie, Ajax, AZ, Feyenoord, PSV, are contributing money to a solidarity fund to help other clubs. And I don't know exactly how it's helping and who it's helping. Ajax is putting 3 million in. I'm assuming euros. AZ, Feyenoord, PSV all putting 500,000 each. UEFA money is going into this. Dutch Federation money is going into this. ING, who's one of the sponsors of the Dutch national team and federation, money is going into that. 5 million from the Dutch Federation, 5 million from ING. They're saying 4.2 from UEFA. I guess that's UEFA money that would go to the federation. That's going into the Solidarity Fund. Contributions from Dutch national team players are going into this as well. I don't know if that is across the board or if it's player by player. That's €1 million each. That's all going in. And some people said, well, why is Ajax putting in 3 million and the others putting in 0.5? Ajax wants to. They realize that they're the biggest club, and there's even the potential, I think, if they get more UEFA money, to put more money into the Solidarity Fund. My guess is this would help in the Netherlands, probably some top flight teams who are going to need help, but definitely second division, hopefully the women's game, hopefully the grassroots game. It's only the second Solidarity Fund in the world that I've heard of during this. It's good to see those clubs do what they need to do.
No doubt. Charlton Athletics said that 3 of their players, including top scorer Lyle Taylor, is refusing to return because he is out of contract at the end of June and is getting courted by other teams in other leagues for a big payday, so he is refusing to return.
Yeah, it's going to be tricky. It's almost like the bowl games that don't matter. You know, why come back and play if it's not going to affect anything? You got money coming, sit it out.
Yep. Out of League Two, Macclesfield Town could face a points deduction, which would leave them at the bottom of League Two after being charged by the EFL on 3 counts, including failing to pay several players their March wages on time.
I'd like to get information about that because I think it's a little bit harder to meet your pay obligations right now for a club like Macclesfield without any revenue. It's not the typical not paying players on time. You know, that might be one that needs to be discussed.
In May, they were given a 7-point deduction for failure to play December's match against Plymouth and the non-payment of wages. And in March, an independent hearing reduced a 10-point deduction for the non-payment of wages and failing to fulfill a fixture against Crewe to a 7-point penalty, 3 suspended. So in total, the club has been deducted 11 points this year.
But the issues were in December. The ruling was, or the question about it came up in March. So, okay, that's a different conversation.
So Macclesfield could be the one that could go to the National League instead of Stevenage, and we've been keeping an eye on that one as well. I'm trying to find my FIFA article, but while I'm looking for it, let me ask, how are you on the crowd noise that we've heard so far in Germany?
It's all over the place. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. It's all down to the sound engineer. In general, I would opt not for it. If I had the choice, I would not listen to it. It doesn't make me angry to where I'm throwing things if it is part of the broadcast that I'm listening to. Right. Are you looking for that FIFA thing on the floor? What are you doing, John?
No, I dropped my pen, and I'm trying to find it. Yeah, there it is.
Good time.
But the reason
it's fine. It is what it is. I don't love it, but it's not that bad. Even when it's distracting, it's not that bad.
Reason I ask is because for the Premier League matches, they're thinking about piping in noise from FIFA 20.
Yeah, that's kind of silly. I would think. I mean, it's good. Like it's realistic, but I would think you could actually go back and look at previous broadcasts and pull noise in. I think what I read Germany was doing was they were even going back to previous broadcasts of those 2 teams and pulling noise in.
I like that.
So you were getting even some of the home and away type of setup for it. So that's cool. Pulling in noise from the video game, I mean, it's pretty realistic, but I think you could do better. But it's all going to be down to how the engineer does it and how they mix it is the most important thing. If it's fake, it's got to be in the background for me. Put it way back in the mix.
Found my FIFA story.
Okay, what's the FIFA story?
All right, this is where the pot and the kettle shake hands.
Oh, boy.
Sepp Blatter claims Gianni Infantino has turned football into a huge money machine.
Oh, really?
The former FIFA president has taken aim at his successor for his desire for everything to be bigger. He was particularly critical, courtesy of our friends at the Daily Mail, of the planned expansion of the World Cup to 48 teams, similar proposals for Club World Cup and Women's World Cup. Quoting Blatter to Swiss news agency Keystone ATS, it seems that Gianni Infantino wanted to pave the way for the presidency. Gianni Infantino wants to turn football into a huge money machine. He wants everything to be bigger. A World Cup of 48 teams, the Goal Project renamed because he wants 3 times more money. A big Club World Cup of 24 teams, passing the Women's World Cup from 24 to 32 teams. It's not possible. It's too heavy to digest. He plays with himself because he is imbued with himself. He has become...
Interesting statement. Probably some translation things going on there.
Yeah, he has become a megalomaniac. In his arrogance, he no longer speaks to the presidents of the association, but only to heads of state.
Well, Sepp might not be the best source on any of this because it takes one to know one. But Gianni Infantino there's questions about him as well when it comes to FIFA. The World Cup's expanded over the years because it gets more votes. The Goal Project Sepp Blatter talks about, he used those for years to get votes in smaller federations and smaller countries because everybody has the same vote. You know, the Turks and Caicos has the same vote as the United States when it comes to FIFA. So, you know, how can you make sure you get a small country's vote? You throw them 6 figures in a pitch or some kind of training program, and you're getting votes. And what happens is sometimes Jack Warner just takes all that money in CONCACAF. Mm-hmm. That's a different conversation.
Yes.
Nothing's different. Infantino's following the roadmap that Blatter paved, and he's following the roadmap that Joel Havilange played, and probably everybody in FIFA has played because it's part of running an organization like that. It's politics. How do you make sure you get votes? You give things to people. Mm-hmm. It's politics. It's what happens. Sepp Blatter saying this is really funny.
Yes, that was why.
Sepp Blatter is, I think, lucky he's in Switzerland and is not going to be fully prosecuted for the things that he has done because the Swiss courts just decided not to, basically. Uh-huh. Yeah. And he's lucky and probably should just go ahead and go somewhere and be quiet and hang out and see out his days and not be involved in soccer in the world ever again. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm trying to find 2 other stories out of the Premier League, one having to do with Steve Parrish talking about his time with Frank de Boer at Crystal Palace because Parrish celebrated his 10th anniversary of being in charge. Ralph Hasenhüttl signed a 4-year extension, by the way. He's got a new deal till 2024. And a lot of folks are giving Hasenhüttl credit for hanging out, especially after, was it the 9-0 loss to Leicester?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they thought that, I did too. I thought Southampton was done and dusted, but he's turned them around, and so now he's got a new extension to 2024. So congrats to Hasenhüttl for sticking it out and getting Southampton to where they are. And the other one was a Manchester United story about them giving some of their day personnel beer and cider.
Well, that's nice.
As a thank you, but I think it was leftover beer and cider. I don't think it was stuff that was fresh. I think it was stuff that was stuck at Old Trafford.
Well, I mean, if it's being refrigerated, it's okay. I mean, if they're giving skunky beer to people, that's not cool. That'll make you sick.
Yeah. So
I don't know about skunky cider. I've never had skunky cider.
No. We retweeted this. If I could get my upper plate to work. Graduation day at the Atlanta United Academy. We retweeted that. We didn't get a chance to talk about that, but it was good to see a lot of talented kids looking to head to the next level in colleges and universities. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, college signing day, not graduation day. You've got 12 players who signed college letters of intent, and these, look, it's not binding. Like Garrison Tubbs, for example, signed with Wake Forest. Garrison Tubbs is really close to potentially signing a pro deal. Does he go to Wake Forest for a year? We didn't get a chance to see Garrison Tubbs with Atlanta United 2 very much. I think early this season, we would have seen a lot of Garrison Tubbs. And maybe things would have went differently. But he signed the letter of intent. We'll see if he goes to Wake Forest. I think Jordan Matthews is another one that we've seen with Atlanta United too. He signed for South Carolina. He will probably go to South Carolina. I don't think he was that close yet. Doesn't mean he can't play his way into it in college, and that's a critical thing here. These guys, all their homegrown rights remain with Atlanta United until they finish their college careers. Brandon Claggett is another one that we have seen with Atlanta United too. He's going to Pittsburgh. Others, Miguel Ramirez to Duke. Josue Hangi is going to Akron, goalkeeper. Mgeni Kaniani is going to Dayton. Anthony Reeves to Cornell. Remy Smith to the Air Force. Victor Delgado to NC State. Keep an eye on Delgado. He's a player that I've liked for a while and wondered if he would be able to make that jump. NC State's a good program. Chase Oliver to Wake Forest, Miguel Gonzalez to Georgia Gwinnett, and Michael Wilkerson to the University of San Diego. 12 players signed for college programs. That's a good thing. I think I've seen some people say, well, why are professional teams celebrating players signing college letters of intent? It's a good thing for these players to continue their careers right now. They're not ready for a professional deal at the moment. They could be next year. They could be in 2 years. They could be in 4 years. But they get to continue to play. It's an opportunity. We've seen international players come to American colleges and take advantage of it. Dom Dwyer's a prime example of that. Played his way into the national team, not making it in Europe, coming here and playing in college, and got all the way through to the national team. That's the kind of things you want to see. So all of these guys get a chance to continue their play after they're moving on from the academy. Some would have had a chance to continue to play this summer. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Some would have had a chance to play for Atlanta United 2 this summer. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Some of these guys you could see in Atlanta United kits again down the road, though. And I think that's something to keep in mind as well. But all of them get the opportunity to play in college and continue their soccer careers and get an education while they're doing it. These are good things. It's a good thing to celebrate.
Found the Manchester United piece before I go to something that just came across from Paul Tenorio, Taylor Twellman et al. Just a quick update.
Let's go to that.
Okay, then go to that.
More important.
Because I was trying to dial it up. That's why.
Okay, I got Taylor Twellman's tweet.
Go. Go ahead.
While things were very intense over the last few days, there has been a major breakthrough between the MLSPA and MLS League office. Cautiously optimistic is the quote. As one more detail is being discussed and pending the new agreement CBA being ratified, a lockout should be avoided. That is good news. Like we said at the top of the show, I mean, the issues were all things that could be handled. Things ramped up with the rhetoric, and that's not good. But when it got backed up, when the deadline got backed up, that's a good sign that you're going to get a deal done. So that's where we're at. Taylor Twellman doesn't tweet things like that out of nowhere. He knows people who knows people. So Taylor putting that out is a very good sign. You're going to have MLS get this deal done and announce something very shortly, I would assume.
Yep. So that's a good way to put a wrap on what we talked at the beginning and talking about it at the end. And we could save Manchester United and their beers and ciders for tomorrow.
No, you already teased it. We had the chance to end with something positive, and now we got to talk about beer and cider that is potentially skunky.
Okay, so here we go. Manchester United, who encouraged their workers to help in their communities, have asked the 170 who did so to hand a crate of beer or cider to a key worker they know and keep one for themselves. The booze has come from the 7,000 bottles of lager and cider left in the Old Trafford stocks since football was suspended in mid-March.
Well, no, see, again, like I don't know. I don't know how it's being stocked. I mean, if it was never put in the fridge, if it was never, put cold, is it still good? Is it maybe a little older? Is it maybe not perfect? I think it's still good. I don't think they're giving them bad alcohol. So, take that. I mean, it's not that bad. You're assuming they're giving out skunky stuff, trying to get people sick.
It's like, okay, what's the expiration date on these things? Has it been refrigerated? Has it been taken care of? Or you just say, hey, here's room temperature cases of beer, you refrigerate it.
No, but if it hasn't been refrigerated, it's okay. So if it hasn't been refrigerated, it can be okay. I got a beer in college one time that made me sick for a weekend. So it happens, and that was at a bar, and it was very bad. And it was like this was not a situation where I didn't know what was going on because I had drank a lot. This was one where I had one beer at the bar, and in 30 minutes later got sick.
Like me with McDonald's French fries,
I guess. And the reason I remember it is it was the weekend of the Women's World Cup final in 1999, and I was having people over to watch the game. That was Friday night. The game was on Saturday. I was having people over and ended up telling them, yeah, I'm still sick. And I'm not eating anything, and I'm not drinking anything except for water, and I will be making visits to the restroom multiple times because I'm still very sick. It was bad. Bad skunky beer. So hopefully they didn't give bad skunky beer to the health people who are helping out with us, people who are helping out in the community. I'm going to assume it wasn't skunky.
Yeah. Let's see. A couple more things. One of the neutral site matches in the Premier League. This goes into the big giant duh column, would be the Merseyside Derby of Everton and Liverpool. Chairman could be banned from the matches inside the Premier League because they may be deemed non-essential personnel. So
yeah, I mean, unless they're going to be tested to be to be straight up with it, I mean, that's where it stands. We will see what happens over the rest of the day in the MLS front, but it sounds pretty good coming out of Twellman that we'll have some announcements and progress announced shortly. I thought once the announcement was that it got pushed back that we were good to go, and hopefully we will be. Hopefully they address the questions about healthcare in the case of a force majeure, and hopefully they just give a little more clarification, because now I'm interested. I want to know what the force majeure clause is going to be since we've become force majeure experts lately. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for being part of the show. As I feel like we say a lot these days, take care of yourselves and look out for the people around you, and take some time to bring some good into the world today. That's what we all need at the moment. So talk to you guys tomorrow with the show. Stay tuned. We might have something special later on, but stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow with more news on the soccer front. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.